Hello, I'm Karen from Close to My Heart, and today I'm going to be sharing some really fun and easy to do-it-yourself stencil storage ideas. Let's start with some 12 by 12 stencils. You can see that here in front of me, I have a 12 by 12 album. A 12 by 12 album is a great storage system. You can see I've just labeled it on the side with a little bit of tape that says stencils. And I'm going to show you some of the fun things we've done inside this album to help me stay organized with my larger stencils. So see my washi tape sliding right out. I'm going to move this so you can see a little bit of everything. First thing I wanted to mention is this envelope that I've glued right here in the front of the album. I've just put a few rolls of washi tape in there. As you know, if you enjoy using stencils as much as I do, you want to have a little washi tape handy while you're using those because it holds them into place as you're either putting texture paste through them or distress inks or gloss sprays, whatever kind of medium you're using on your stencils. You want them to stay in place, and a little bit of washi tape is helpful. So a nice little envelope there in the front would be great. You could even use like a plastic CD holder or something there that could close and stay closed for you. But what I want to really show you is the good stuff over here. A 12 by 12 memory protector. We're just using our Close to My Heart memory protectors is a great place to store your stencils. You'll notice that I've put some black cardstock in the back of this, and it could be black, it could be a color, anything you want, but that's really helpful because it helps you see what's happening on the stencil, and then the stencils behind you aren't showing through and confusing you really on the design that you have. So you'll also probably notice that I have some tabs here along the sides that are helping me know by category what I've got. So these are background stencils. The next tab says floral. Then I have landscape, and I have backgrounds. And we're going to look at a few of these fun stencils, and some of the stencils you're going to see as I show you in the book are being used today in the artwork on the blog post that you're probably on as you're watching this video. So the backgrounds are fun. Some of these are stencils that we sell pre-made, like this one. Others are stencils that we've cut with our one of our Cricut collections. And so you can choose what works best for you or a combination of all of them, which is what I like to do. So you can see all the backgrounds that I've got there. We've labeled those with what the stencil is and even which pack it came from, if we purchased it from Close to My Heart or if I created my own. Now let's look at a few of these fun ideas. This one is the section that says floral, and this is just one that I created with a Cricut collection where I did a little bit of welding to create layers so that I could create something fun and exciting with that. One thing that's kind of cool about this is you can see I've just labeled it right here at the top with the M number that I would use to find that image on Cricut in case I ever want to recreate that same stencil in the future, since I cut those out of cardstock. Now this one's fun. This is a cloud, and this is what I would create with the cloud stencil, which is another really great idea. If you've got stencils in here that you think maybe later, I might look at that stencil and think, why did I get that stencil and how did I use that stencil? It's great to do an example that you have. And you can see in this fun example, we've just used a cloud stencil, which I'll show you in just a second, used a little bit of Distress Oxide ink to sponge around it and to create the sky, and added a little water. So now I can look back and see a way that I've used that cloud stencil that I really loved and be able to recreate that. Now on the back of this page is where I've put my stencil, and hopefully you'll be able to see them here on this video. They're cut out of our stencil sheets that we carry here at Close to My Heart. And I want to show you something cool, because you might be looking at these going, those are just lines of clouds. How do I make that look that way? And that's not exactly what I see here. There are so many fun ways you can use a stencil like this. You can line it up, but you can see that doesn't fit right over the clouds, right? So this one right here actually lines up with this one, and then I can just slightly move it as I go and line a scallop from the next cloud into the one I've just made. So I can create my own custom ways these clouds are falling and attaching and layering just by moving my stencils around. And maybe this little guy is going to connect, instead of connecting to that next little scallop, I might decide to stop right there and go to this one. So I create a different looking cloud. So that's some really fun ideas for cloud stencils. We just created those from one of our collections in our stencil sheets. Here's another example of kind of what I just showed you. A mountain stencil we created with one of our Cricut images from Close to My Heart. There's our M number to remind me. And I've created a fun mountain background. And you can see my mountain stencil on the back. Now let me just show you. This is another really great way to create a stencil in layers. So I've got a large background with mountains, one that fits inside it. So this larger part in the back would be great to add the snow on the peaks. Here's where I might want to sponge in there to get the look of that last mountain you saw. Let's just flip back. So you can see that's what we did. We have the sponged pieces and a little bit of texture paste on the top. And so that helps me be able to remember how I've used those. Now, a couple of other fun things to show you. On this next one, you can see that our grass stencil is in an envelope in this one. We've created a long grass stencil to be able to sponge through and around. So we started by sponging through it and then laid a stencil that we created right on the top and sponged around that. And that's how we got that lighter and darker look. Now, those are perfect and they fit right here in this envelope, and I can look right on the outside of the envelope and see exactly what I'm going to get from what I created in that envelope. But I might want to create other stencils for grass, and I can just put those right in the same little protector because I might have more grass stencils. Now let's move here to the back. Here's an example of maybe using a colored cardstock so that you can see your stencils. It really doesn't matter if you use a dark color or a bright color. Either way, you're able to see your stencils. You can see these are all well loved. These I have cut out of our stencil sheets as well and used our Cricut collections to create some fun stencils like bricks and stripes and dots and stars. So those are all really great, and you could create as many different categories in your organization album for your stencils as you'd like. We have included in this blog post a link to a design space file you can use for these tabs and the ones I'm about to show you. So this is the idea for storing 12 by 12 stencils, or even some of your other stencils that are not quite that large, but large enough that they're hard to store in other places. Now let's go to our next example of some fun ways to store stencils. This would be a great way to store some of your smaller stencils. I brought this box because this is one of our small stamp organization boxes. You can see it holds our M-size stamps perfectly. But the reason I brought this little box full of stamps to show you is this is what you'll see in our catalog or on our website, and we've used it to create this fun storage file system. We have just taken the lid off of the box because some of these, as you can see, are a little taller than the box itself. Now this is a great way to store some of your smaller stencils, and I'm just going to turn it so that you can see the words. These tabs are also included in the design space file that we're sharing here on this blog post. And you can see some of them are on one side, some on the other, some in the center, different shapes of tabs. So you can do your own thing to make it look just like you want it to. Let's talk through a few of these examples of how I've stored my stencils as well. So this first section says alphas and words. And they could be created. You could create a stencil from a thin cut, a die cut, like what you see here. This is one of our die cuts that we have used to create a stencil. So if I pull out what's in the envelope, I can see that die cut that I've created. And on the outside of the envelope, I see what it's going to look like from the stencil that I made. And I used that one, I used a die. Now let's look over here. This one, all of those I used die cuts. This one is from a Cricut cut, and it is in my second section here that I've labeled Cricut. This is a flower that's part of one of our Close to My Heart collections. And if I pull out the stencils that I've created, I've just used our stencil sheets just like I told you before, and I've cut this flower in layers. So you can see that I have a solid flower, which on this outside of the envelope, you can see that that's what I've used to sponge through to create this cute little flower for the base, the more solid part. Then I use this next layer to be able to create these darker stripes that are on the flower. And on my envelope, I've included that M number that I used. So I hope this is giving you some fun inspiration of ways not only to store your stencils, but ways you can create stencils, whether it's with Cricut collections or die cuts or pre-purchased stencils. So many fun ways to do them. Now let's see if I can. Here's another really fun example. We have a stamp set that looks just like that ice cream cone. And I've listed on the outside of the envelope the stamp set number so I remember that and can pull it out when I want to use it with what I've created. And I'm going to pull that out. And I have created my own stencils by just stamping that ice cream cone and cutting out certain areas of it with an X-Acto knife. So you can see that I cut out the ice cream part. On this next part, I cut out the bottom of the cone and the next part, the top of the cone. So when I stamp this image, I'll be able to lay this right on top of there and sponge through there. Then I can lay this right on top of there and sponge through it. And the reason it's nice to have those two as separate, maybe I want to make this lower part just a little bit darker than this upper part to show some shading and shadowing. And then this last one fits perfectly over the top of the ice cream for me to be able to sponge or whatever I choose to use as my medium to put through my stencil. So even stamp sets can help you create your own stencils. One last one I wanted to show that's a fun example. You can see this nice little dotted border on this envelope. And this one I just created with a hole punch. So just a tiny hole punch that I took and punched right in a row, evenly spaced. And now I have a really great dotted border stencil that I've created that I can use to sponge through anytime I want. And I see right on my envelope that that's what it's going to look like. And I've even told myself I created that with a hole punch. So many fun ideas that you can use to create not only the stencils themselves, but the storage system to hold them. I hope we've inspired you and that the design space file that we've included will be helpful to you as you begin to store your stencils so that they're easy to use, easy to find, and you can create beautiful art.